Stewart Mandel described the Big Ten and SEC as rigging college football. Yeah.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest, craziest sport on planet Earth. Please ignore Arizona State's S&P Plus rating. It's absurd. Is Missouri going to actually capitalize on what they've done in the last 2 years? That's all on today's show, which is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Stewart Mandel had a scathing piece over in The Athletic about what the proposed changes, discussed changes, nothing is official yet, but the 4-4-2-2-1-1 format or something in 4-4-2-2-1, I can't keep all the numbers straight, quite frankly. He described it as they're rigging it in their favor. Well, kinda. And, you know, I want to go back to a point that I've raised several times over the last many years. I have been an anti-playoff expansionist for quite some time, since the debate first arose. Because what I have long said, and this is just proving to be true as time goes on here, is that once you expand the playoff, they won't stop at least until they get to 24 teams. And then we're just going to chip away at the value of the regular season, which has always been what has made college football different than the NFL or any other sport. There is no other sport that has an average week-to-week urgency on a given college football Saturday than college football. There's nothing that compares. An NFL game, teams that win their division, that win their conference, can lose 5 games in a year. You can't do that in college football. Until this past year, a 2-loss team had never made the playoff and won a national championship just one time. That was LSU back in 2007. That was it. So when you go and tear at the fabric of what makes something really good and special, it's going to get worse. It always will continue to cycle because at some point, unfortunately, someone is going to look. Think about how long a 12-team expansion, a 12-team playoff expansion is actually going to wind up lasting. 2 whole years. They tripled the playoff field. If you want to argue that 4 was too small, fine. You cannot reasonably argue, whilst having the best interests of college football at heart, that going beyond 8 was a good idea. I would have lobbied for 6. And the only time I ever really thought, 6 is probably necessary, is when Georgia missed the playoff going for their 3rd straight national championship. They went undefeated in the regular season. They're in the SEC championship game, and they lose to Alabama. And based on that format, they were correctly left out of the playoff. I wanted to see them left out of the playoff. They were, because I value the regular season, and I personally think of the conference championship games as an extension of that. So when that team lost, I thought to myself, okay, something in college football has shifted, this, that, or the other thing, and I see a team that can win the national championship that is not in the 4-team playoff. I had never felt that before. The teams that had been left out, this team was robbed, this team was screwed, Florida State at 13-0. No. That was never something that crossed my mind, that a team that missed the playoff was capable of winning it all. Nope. Until that year. So if you want to go to 6, that's fine. But they tripled the size of the playoff. They added 8 teams, and that's going to last 2 whole seasons. And you think they're going to be done? Do you think the SEC and the Big Ten will just sit there with their 4 auto bids each and continue to think that's okay? Because we can just keep extending the debate out and out and out until we're talking about whether 8-4 or 7-5 SEC teams deserve to get into the playoff. That's where we're going. Eventually. Not immediately, but eventually. Because the idea of the Big Ten and SEC getting 4 bids each, yeah, they are rigging it in their favor. Now, the point that Mandel makes, I get where he's coming from, which is, well, no other sports league has got a conference or a division getting more bids than another. It's college sports. It's different. We all know that. Like, it's not hard to try and understand the reasoning. You don't have to like the eventual outcome, because I don't. It's not hard to understand what the reasoning is, why the Big Ten and SEC are saying we should get 4 auto bids each and everybody else should get less than that. And of course, the Big 12 and the ACC are going to try to fight that. They're going to try and get they're going to debate all of this stuff. Could they go 4-4, 3-3-1, and then one other at-large? But then that might not be a great situation for the Group of 5 or some other schools out there, the New World Pac-12. Like, there are a lot of impacted parties here. You know who's always going to be well off? Big Ten and SEC. Big Ten and SEC. So when you expanded the playoff, what you allowed for all you folks out there that were, we've got to expand the playoff, let more teams in. Once you did that, you opened the door for these conferences to become even bigger heavy hitters and decision makers for everybody else. And it stinks. It stinks. I won't sit here and try and argue that. Will this blow be lessened once college football games start playing? I say that all the time. It is perfectly fair and valid, in my view, to be frustrated by all of these changes. NIL and the portal and coaches going all over the place, which has, been in place for a lot longer than the player mobility side of things, or playoff changes, conference changes. Like, it's drinking out of a fire hose for new stuff in college football. Once the games get on the field, it's a lot easier to forget about that. But the way that this is going, because it was so short-lived, there has been no discussion, no reporting from anyone anywhere that they would keep it at 12 or that they would only do 14. They've already gone to 16. You're telling me not even 1,000 days went by or will have gone by with a 12-team playoff before gotta expand it, you just wait. You just wait. It might not happen in 2026. Depends on how long the playoff contract is actually for, because remember, as of right now, there is no playoff structure in college football beginning for the 2026 season, which is crazy, but hey, this is the sport we got. It's the greatest sport on planet Earth, but I also call it the craziest because it's pretty wild and crazy that this is how this always goes down. So at first I saw that word rigged in Mandel's piece and thought, that's a little harsh, and then thought, well, yeah, they kind of are. Or they just straight up are, not even kind of. Like, yeah, we get more teams. Yeah, our games aren't going to matter as much. And once you started to chip away at the value of the regular season, this was always the inevitable outcome. So today, I'll just point out a little bit. I'll give you like a micro dose of an I told you so. Just going to point that out there. So let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. With regards to this upcoming season, it's going to be really fun. Really, really fun. We're less than 3 months away from an actual football game that I'll be talking about having been played, and I will be discussing it right here on this very program. Please ignore something you might see floating around in the internet world about Arizona State. First, this episode brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That is where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. All in one convenience, that's what they're all about. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. That's why you got to go get them. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com. for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LockedOnCollege for half off your first year. monarchmoney.com. In what universe, galaxy, world, Andromeda, whatever, can you have Arizona State ranked 22nd going into next year? I know Bill Connolly's S&P Plus, which factors in returning production, recent recruiting, and information from the previous 4 seasons, might be putting a little bit too much weight on the previous 4 seasons part. Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils is here. I couldn't get past this, Richie. I just couldn't, because there are some good teams that I have no objection to Arizona State being behind in this metric, but people see this stuff and there's no context, which is what we're here to do. Provide the context. And the context is, this is ridiculous no matter what metric you're looking at. How are you going to put on paper, Arizona State behind Missouri, who we're talking about later in today's show, behind SMU, behind Kansas State, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Florida, and they threw South Carolina in there because why the heck not? Can you explain that to me, Richard?
Spencer, as much as I love to get in front of a camera, hear my own voice, and tell you things like I know what I'm talking about, if I'm trying to explain to you how that metric has accurately taken into account, what was one of the things you said? Returning production, right? Returning
production, yes. One of the key factors.
Yeah, and ASU's returning pretty much everything except Cam Scatterville, which I understand that's a big blow. The People's running back is gone. We're returning Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson and pretty much everyone else on offense. Like, we could sit here and go into this for hours, Spencer, but what's blowing me away is I don't know how you take one of those metrics being returning production, grant that to be as important as it is, and then not apply it to the team that is returning, I think, the 3rd most production in college football. Clemson's ahead of them, and there might be one other team. That's it.
Illinois could be really high on that list.
That may be the only other one.
Illinois, good team. But
great team. I finished 4th place in the Big Ten, I hear.
Some have said. Some have said they should be power rated 4th in the Big Ten going into next year. Some have said
someone crazy.
He might be insane, but he's got a good show.
Microphone.
He's got a microphone in a show, and an audience. There are actual numbers out there. I've heard. I've just heard. So if you were to make a preseason top 25, Richie, and put your Sun Devils bias in there as much as you would like, Arizona State, no matter which way you slice it, shouldn't. There's no way they should be outside the top 15, right? Let alone outside the top 20.
Oh, yeah. No, that's the bare minimum. I would tell you anything outside of the top 12 would not be accurate, in my opinion. And I'm also really annoyed with seeing other Big 12 teams placed ahead of Arizona State. I like Iowa State. I like Kansas State. I like BYU. I like Texas Tech. Why are any of them ahead of Arizona State when Arizona State's bringing everything back? That's my problem with it.
I think the Texas Tech angle, I'll defend the Red Raiders here because they'd be my preseason favorite in the Big 12. I think Arizona State has a higher floor based on what they showed last season. I think Texas Tech has raised their ceiling considerably. Their offseason moves, it can be, if you want to call it prisoner of the offseason moment, that's fine. I understand that. Texas Tech has gone out and invested the funds necessary to, and I commend them for doing so, to get a top 5 transfer portal class in all of college football. That's not a small thing. You can't just say, they brought in some good guys. No. This was an 8-4 regular season team last year that went out and brings back plenty and got significantly better. And by the way, you know who's 4th in returning production in the country? Texas Tech. Arizona State is 2nd, just ahead of Illinois. Only Clemson is ahead of all of them at number 1. They're the only school in the country that returns over 80% of their production from a season ago. So that does not automatically mean you're going to go win a championship. It does mean, in my view, if you were a good team last year, there's a floor that, barring catastrophic injuries to places like quarterback, you're just not going to go below.
Right. And if you like the term paper champs, then Texas Tech is the paper champs. And normally you say that disparagingly, like, oh, look at the Cleveland Browns or the Chicago Bears are paper champs for the umpteenth year. Texas Tech is the paper champs.
Hold on for just a moment. Whoever picked the Bears to be good?
Oh, dude, you gotta watch more NFL, I guess, because
apparently so.
Year it's the Chicago Bears are the paper champs.
Because in my head, I've never picked the Bears as the paper champs of anything except last place.
Brother, you might want to hop on Locked On then and let them know how you feel. But the point is, Spencer, in a non-disparaging, non-insulting way, Texas Tech is the paper champs of the Big 12 and one of the biggest winners of the offseason in college football, and they are going to contend for the Big 12 heavily this year. But considering ASU didn't lose nearly what they lost, they are number one until further notice. If you lost Scadaboo, Tyson, Levitt, 5 players on defense, yeah, then you can put them second, third, fourth, whatever. But they're returning basically the whole team, which is where I get annoyed that other Big 12 teams are ahead of them. And I certainly get annoyed that you are 22nd on your SP Plus rankings. And Bill Connolly, I never liked that guy anyway.
You never liked that guy.
I always hated that guy. Until he said something nice about ASU, and then he's my favorite. Always.
Yeah, that sounds about right for how college sports fandom tends to work. You can't stand people who put together a statistical list and have never you've never.
I became
met
a very big Scott Van Pelt fan this year, and it's funny. I never really used to listen to him too much, and I don't know. Suddenly, I'm just willing to go to war for Scott Van Pelt.
You didn't watch a lot of SportsCenter with SVP over the years? That's like the only SportsCenter I've watched in the last 10 years. Tragically, I used to watch it every morning.
Spencer, it's the gif of the penguin from Madagascar pointing at the sign that says it was a joke.
Oh.
It's because he's accused of having that SEC bias working for ESPN, and he's never talked about ASU before, but now he does. So I'm like, hey, I love that guy. He's the best.
Yeah. Okay.
There you go.
My bad. I missed that one. I hope
it's
we all get it,
sweetie. It was a smart joke.
We could all have a laugh at my expense. I will allow that, even though this is my show. But last thing on Arizona State here, Richie. I really like the Sam Levitt, Jordan Tyson connection, and I think a lot of people. Yeah, it's hard to not. But I want you to go deeper into that returning tandem. Do you think Joel Klatt had Sam Levitt number 4 on his top quarterbacks in all of college football last year? I like Levitt a lot. I would not have him number 4 ahead of Garrett Nussmeier. Is number 4 where you think Sam Levitt should be?
Right about there. And I would tell you that the 3 ahead of him would be Nussmeier, Aller, and Klubnik until further notice.
I think the hottest part about that take is that you'd put Drew Aller there, because Levitt was, I don't remember exactly what his stats were in the quarterfinal game against Texas, but Aller's got that stigma around him, right? Mm-hmm. That he doesn't show up in the big games and all that. He just won 2 playoff games, but he's not going to get any credit for that, of course. That's the way that this game is played. But Levitt at 4, I feel like I want to see just a tad more. I would rank him ahead of DJ Lagway at Florida. I would.
Oh, yeah. I was yelling at you about that before we got started.
Yeah, I would do that because I've seen more from Levitt than I've seen from Lagway.
Being on the field, turns out, is your best ability.
What's the best ability? What is
Availability.
Availability, yes. And
hard to be good when you're not on the field. Isn't that right, Florida fans who cheered for Anthony Richardson? Man, this seems really familiar.
Yeah, it does.
But I love Lagway. He's just not better.
Oh, yeah, he's a stud.
And we can leave it there.
He's a stud. We will leave it there. Richie Bradshaw, Locked On Sun Devils, great as always. I mentioned Missouri earlier. I'm wondering something about Missouri right now, and you should too. What is happening in Missouri, or rather, what isn't happening in Missouri? And if that lead-in sounds familiar, we had the same conversation about Florida on Friday's show. Brian Smith, Locked On Recruiting Analyst in the Portal Podcast, here to discuss 2 commits. It's up to 2. It's up to 2 for the Missouri Tigers, Brian, in the class of 2026. This is a program in the SEC that's won 21 games in the last 2 years. And we're sitting here at the end of May, and and they landed Williams Nwaneri last cycle. He's not on the roster anymore. Like, is Missouri just destined to be in perpetual mediocrity and occasionally elevating to being above average?
I think they're a little better than that because they did get like Damon Wilson out of the portal and some other guys, but it is weird. Like, they've had this success you talked about, and I thought they were going to be kind of a surprise recruiting team this year. But then when I texted you that, like, hey, they got one commitment. You're like, what? I'm like, they got one commitment. I don't know what to tell you. That's where they're at. And I'm as surprised as you, and I study this every day. They've got one of the top 10 NIL programs, arguably in college football. Certainly for in-state, it's one of the best. They just finally got an in-state kid to commit. They didn't finish in the top 3 to 5 for Jackson Cantwell, an in-state player, which is shocking.
Not great.
Yeah, that was pretty bad. And your parents went to school there. That hurts. So, like, I don't know what the deal is, but they got to figure that out because your window when you're Missouri to strike is right now. This has to turn around. And while they've got 2 commits, they've got a bazillion visits coming up. And how is that going to go? I don't know, but right now I'm a little nervous because you only got 2 guys committed off 21 wins over the last 2 years. I'm not going to look it up because I don't need to. That's the most they've had in the last 30, 40 years in 2 years. There's no way. There's no way. They just have been so bad. So if you can't capitalize now, when are you going to capitalize?
That's what I wonder because, a school that pops in my head is the one that we talked about earlier on today's show with Richie Bradshaw of Locked On Sun Devils, and that's Arizona State. Arizona State goes out and wildly overachieves. They're picked to finish last in the Big 12. They win the conference. And what are they doing? There's buzz. We've talked on this show before about whether Arizona State could get a top 10 class. And that might be reaching a little high, but it doesn't feel out of the realm of possibility. Missouri doesn't feel close. And when you take this step forward, you ever see the movie Mall Cop with Kevin James?
God, that was good.
Oh, yes. I love that movie. I love that movie growing up. Here's what Missouri is. Missouri is that scene where he takes the hot sauce and he shoots it across and he gets it in the bad guy's eye. And then everyone's standing around waiting for him to go and attack and to capitalize on the fact that he just landed a drop of hot sauce in a guy's eye and he's temporarily incapable of fighting. And then Kevin James sits there and he's like, and he just stands there and they're all waiting to go for him to go forward and to, jump on the guy. And then Beck comes out of it and he goes, probably should have capitalized on that. Like, you're not going to have a 21 win stretch forever. Because part of Missouri's success over the last couple of years is Eli Drinkowitz is a good coach. I'm not saying he's disaster area, needs to be fired or anything like that. He's clearly a really, really good coach. And also, you can point out, their schedule's been really favorable. And with the way schedules rotate, it's not going to be like that forever. And so, it's the end of May, but I still expected more. I expected them to be in the mix for Cantwell more than they were. I expect them to be able to push for a top 20 class, but when you're this, at this point in the cycle, can they get there?
They got to hit the inside straight, man. Like, I'm looking at some of their visits now. They got some really good players coming on campus, but I want to go back to Cantwell. In state, they're not doing as well as I thought they would, but that could change. But with some teams, like I did an Oklahoma podcast earlier. One of the things I told the guys over there is, like, if they start out the season this year better than what they're expecting, like Oklahoma's over-under on FanDuel is like 6.5 because their schedule's crazy. If they overachieve, they'll probably flip some kids. Well, Missouri's expected to do pretty well this year, A, because of the schedule, and B, they've been pretty good. They're not going to get the same kind of thing going that Oklahoma does if they win. They got to get it done this summer. Are we confident in that with 2 commitments? I'm not. So I need to see it now. I'm in a little bit of panic mode for Missouri because 2's not enough. And I'm sure they're going to get some good players. They'll sign a top 25 class, but this should have been one of those classes where they pushed forward and possibly got into that top 10 or at least close. Right now, I'm not seeing that.
You're still confident they push into the top 25?
It's very possible because this is a long process. They can still flip a few kids, but like not coming close on Cantwell, you're not going to flip him. Obviously, that's a plug and play guy. In the state of Missouri, there's still quite a bit of talent in St. Louis, Kansas City. They could get 5-6 kids in state that are good. And some around the country, Texas, Florida kids they got coming in for visits. Shar Charles and different guys. They've got good players coming in. I'm just not confident in that staff right now. It's the visits look good, but you haven't gotten anybody, and everybody else is picking up commitments all over the place. What is going on? I'd love to know. And I'm sure there's a lot of chatter on the Missouri message boards about it too, because why wouldn't there be?
Yeah, I'm sure there's got to be a reason. Whether or not it's a good reason, that remains to be seen. This is a staff, in their defense, that has pulled in back-to-back classes that on 24/7's metrics rank exactly 20th in the country. That's not nothing. But again, if you want to elevate up and be a program that suddenly ascends up to the top the way that Tennessee has in the last few years under Josh Heupel, for a long time, Tennessee was just kind of shit. They were going a lot. They were good. Oh, look, they're in the top 25. They didn't quite sustain. Now Tennessee can come into every season, and this one is different, of course, because of the Nico situation, and expect to make the playoff because the way I see it, they recruited at a high level, right?
They're going to have players come in behind them. They may not have the experience, but they walk in the room like, that's what it's supposed to look like. If you don't get those guys, you don't advance in the playoffs. You go home, or you're like you and I, you just sit and watch it on TV anyway. It's about the players at that level. It's 100% about recruiting. You can ask Kirby Smart. He talks about it all the time in press conference. It's about recruiting. So I don't see my family that much. It's like he openly admits that. So they better figure it out because, again, this window is small. Starting next year, they're going to get a harder schedule. It's a lock. They rotate the schedule next year. It's not going to be the same. They need to capitalize on this class and then have a good year. Then they'll be okay. But they got like the next 6 weeks for Missouri is huge.
Brian Smith, the Portal Podcast, longtime recruiting analyst. Great as always. Appreciate everybody listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.